Deep Space Nine is a fan favorite show amongst superfans of the Star Trek universe. It's beloved for its unique cast of characters, its emphasis on family and redemption, and its fearless analysis of the effects of war on all parties involved. It's been decades since the last episode aired, and I am finally ready to go through the series for the very first time. Join me as I share my most and least favorite episodes, character highlights, and honest reactions to this epic show. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. And today I am continuing my journey through my very first watch through of Deep Space Nine. And we're going to be talking about season 4. So I've got my 3 lowest episodes, my 3 least favorite episodes from this season, and then my 3 most favorite episodes from this season. I've got some honorable mentions. There's like a little bit more than 3, but yes, I'm going to try to keep it to 3 low, 3 high, 1 honorable mention. Super excited to have this conversation. This has been so fun watching this show for the first time as an adult Trekkie, because it feels like, and I said this for my review of season 1, this show feels like the nostalgia of TNG, which is the show I super love, but it's got, it's like a secret vault or something like that of extra bonus episodes I didn't see. So it's got that nostalgia factor that I really love. But the storylines are very, very different, right? Because it's a space station, not a ship that's floating around. And they kind of have to be really creative in how they tell stories. And they're doing so much long-form storytelling, which I super love. Because we get to see all these where are they nows. We get to see character growth and development, which is really hard to do in an episodic anyways. As I'm continuing my journey through season 4 and telling you some of my favorites and my least favorites, I would love to hear from you. What is your favorite episode from season 4 of Deep Space Nine? Let me know in the comments and let me know why you love it. For those of you who are watching on the replay, there are timestamps below so you can jump ahead at any time. I want to say hello to everyone watching live and hello to everyone watching on the replay. And without further ado, let's go over my first low episode. So here's an episode that was not my favorite. Season 4, Episode 5, Indiscretion. Kira and Dukat team up to search for the long-lost Cardassian prison ship, the Ravenok, which held a number of Bajoran prisoners. They discover the wreckage, and against all odds, they also find a few survivors working in a labor camp run by the Breen. The most surprising survivor is Dukat's half-Bajoran daughter, Zial. Despite initial plans to kill her to avoid disgrace, Dukat ultimately chooses to bring her back to Cardassia. So, okay, let's start with the things I loved about this episode. We get the Breen. Is this our first time seeing the Breen? Maybe. We get the Breen, which is super interesting, right? This whole other species, and they wear these like cooling suits or something. I don't love their outfits. They do feel a little clunky and a little 90s wanting to be Cylons, but not really cool Cylons feel. However, A++ for doing something creative. So, I mean, I can't really complain. Whatever they decide to do with their alien looks are always, even if they're not looks that I love, I like that they're trying something creative, right? It's not just like a human with one like longer ears or something like that, right? It's something different. Anyways, loved the story about Zial. I thought that was really interesting that there was this daughter, and now Dukat has this internal struggle of should I just murder her in cold blood, which is my instinct, my inclination, or should I accept her as a daughter and kind of ruin all my reputation and my relationship with my wife and family, my kids and stuff like that. So I do like that there was a bit of inner conflict and adding a little bit of layers to Dukat. Now, here's why this made my low list. Couple reasons. One, with the exception of one episode I've seen, I don't like the Kira Dukat episodes. I just feel like they're forced, they're awkward, they're slow. I think there's always this attempt to show Kira trying to put up with her oppressors and Dukat trying his best to charm her and win her over and woo her. And I just find it exhausting. I find it exhausting. I don't find it interesting or entertaining. It's kind of the opposite feeling that I have with Odo and Kira. When Odo is kind of silently pining, that to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet. Like he loves her, but he respects her and all of that. But when Dukat is just like throwing himself on her, I don't have those same warm and fuzzies, I'm just like, back off. You slaughtered millions of her people. No, she does not want to get with you. Back off, So that's one big thing is the Kira Dukat thing for like a whole episode is just, I find that exhausting and not super, super interesting. Also, this whole thing of Dukat fell in love with this Bajoran woman and had a kid together. And he's like, it was love. So first of all, when you're the oppressor and this person is like can be treated as your property, it's really hard to call that love. You know what I mean? Like, you're in control of this whole situation, but whatever. We already know Dukat is delusional. But he's like, it was true love. We had a daughter together because we were in love. Why is she going to a labor camp then, Mr. We're in love? Why isn't she going to some like happy-go-lucky paradise? Why is she in the same transport with all the other people who are going to a labor camp? And I think there was something in the story about how maybe she wasn't supposed to get off on the labor camp. She was supposed to go on to some other planet or something like that. And maybe this is the only way he could smuggle her off the station. I don't know. But that's another level of like me not liking Dukat. And this part of the story just being like, oh, great. He seduced some Bajoran woman. They had a kid. He sent them away to wherever they were supposed to go. And I didn't totally buy while I like that they were adding layers to his character, I didn't totally buy the whole like, oh, because I have this Bajoran daughter and my wife doesn't know I had an affair. By the way, it seems like Dukat has an affair every time we turn around. But anyways, my wife didn't know I had this affair. And because she's half Bajoran, she won't be accepted. And it'll just like ruin my reputation. So that's why I have to kill her, because she won't be accepted by the Bajorans. She won't be accepted by the Cardassians. It's just going to be better for her all around. Then at the end, he's just like, all right, Kira, you've convinced me. I'm going to just love my daughter because she's so great. I didn't totally buy that. I feel like that just didn't ring true to me. I feel like Dukat actually would have killed her. Like, that was my feeling. Let me know what you think about that episode. Did you buy that? Were you like, oh yeah, Dukat would totally just like embrace his little love child and just, and then the other thing too, is I think the daughter was supposed to be 13. And I don't know if she was supposed to be 13 at this point when they found her, or if she was 13 when that ship went missing, but she was supposed to be super young. So I also am not sure if Dukat was any part of her upbringing, because she kept talking about her mom saying he was so great and my dad's such an important man and all this other stuff. But then she would also be like, yeah, the other prisoners, because everybody who was on that thing became prisoners of the Breen, including the Cardassians. And so then she was like, yeah, the Cardassians said that my dad's going to kill me when he sees me because Cardassians will never accept me. So you've got mom and, mom saying, your dad's amazing. And the other Cardassians being like, yeah, your dad's amazing. So she's just like doe-eyed and happy. And she's just like, Father, it's you. I'm so glad to have you back in my life. And like, I get young kids being naive, but also this is a kid who was raised as a Bajoran under the occupation. And then the second half of her life, or however many years the ship has been missing, were in a Breen labor camp. How is she not more like Kira? How is she not like toughened by all of this hardship, especially psychologically? She seems just like doe-eyed. She seems like Alexander Rashenko, just like doe-eyed about life. And I feel like that also didn't totally ring true. This super naive, pretty bubbly, still sweet young girl who just loves her father and wants to be with him. So those two things didn't really do it for me. The fact that Dukat actually accepted his daughter, the fact that the daughter was really naive and kind of pure in a sense. And then the third thing, which was the bigger thing, was the Kira Dukat combo that I just don't love. When it's going to be an episode of just the two of them, I'm like, here we go. Yeah, and maybe I just really super relate to Kira for some reason, and just I feel how uncomfortable it would be to be in these various situations, trapped with this man who's just constantly laying it on thick and just trying to get you to like him. And those are my thoughts on this episode. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat, and then I'm gonna go to my next low episode on the list, which may be controversial. In fact, every choice I make, I think from now on, is probably going to be pretty controversial because it's a very beloved show. This is my first time watching through Deep Space Nine. So I haven't had the years that I've had with TNG and Voyager of talking with other fans and kind of coming to a consensus about what we as a group agree are the best episodes and the worst episodes. I haven't had that experience. So this is just first watch through, my experience, how I'm feeling, sometimes heavily based on whether or not I need a snack or a nap. With no other output. So if you are offended, apologies. Also, let me know in the comments what your favorite episodes are, or your defense of these episodes and why they really are so great, and some things I did not consider about how truly great they are. Okay, I'm going to check the chat, and then we'll go to the next episode on the list. Okay. We have a lot of chats in the list. Okay, so PS2 Chipper says, I think my favorite episode scene-wise was season 4, episode 1. And scene-wise, I'm guessing you mean like the end, like the very end, the big the big fight. Yes, I can confirm that I have officially finished all of Deep Space Nine at this point. So there will be no more spoilers like there were last week. There will be no more spoilers. So people can say anything about any season, and I'm not going to be like, what? That happened? But we're still going to talk about them kind of one season at a time. So this week will be season 4, next week will be season 5, etc. Yes, Kira Dukat scenes being awkward. That's the point, though, right? I guess that's the point. I don't know. If that's the point, then they nailed it. Yes, Dukat has a thing for Bajoran ladies, which is creepy because he's a creep. Hi, Sela. I don't hate Indiscretion the way I hate Strange New Worlds. Life Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach, as far as putting kids in danger plot goes. Remind me of that episode. Remind me of which episode that is, Dustin. So I can agree or disagree because I'm blanking on what that episode is. Do you know which person Dukat loves the most? I do. Dukat. Dukat loves Dukat the most. Yes, Dukat loves all the ladies. Yep, I agree. It's Dukat. I think it was 13 when the ship went missing. Okay, so it was 13 when the ship went missing, and I think it was missing for 6 years. These are the numbers that are coming to my brain, so I think this is what really happened, but, correct me if I'm wrong. So at this point, she's 19, but she acts pretty young, right? She kind of acts like a 15, 16-year-old when they meet her, right? She's just so like, hello, father. I don't know. She doesn't act like a woman who's been in this war-torn environment for her whole life. Which maybe that was just a choice on the writers, that's the kind of character they wanted. One thing I don't like about Indiscretion is that it can be interpreted as an exaggerated way to show that interracial relationships and the kids that result don't work. Yeah, it could be. And I think maybe that's what they were trying not to say, that there's something wrong with interracial relationships, because they were trying to say that Dukat is wrong for wanting to kill her because the interracial child. And he should just accept her and embrace her and stuff like that, right? What we didn't address in this episode, so I agree with you, Nadia. What they didn't address, though, was like the fact that he's pursuing Bajoran women who are under his control, right? So it's like it's almost like a really, it's really hard to compare to anything because they were literally the occupying force. So these were basically slaves and indentured servants who did not have autonomy and free will. And so he's going around going, you, come to my bed. And then he's like, oh, we're deeply in love. And then he gets them pregnant and then he wants to kill them. You know what I mean? Like, everything about this is wrong. So I think that is more, that's more the issue I have with it than the interracial part. It's more the whole situation, I think, is awful. And that's not addressed. So his behaviors are not addressed. What is addressed is the fact that the child's interracial and the problems that that's going to cause for Dukat's life. And for her life, I guess. But he's playing a killer, so for not very long, I guess. I think he came around to the idea of someone looking up to him in the way he's always wanted. That could be true. That could be why he was like, yes, I want her to be with me, because he knew the effect it would have on his standing in Cardassia, that there would be so much shame, that his wife would leave him and his kids would never talk to him. And he was willing to put up with that, perhaps because this daughter just adores him, right? She just thinks he's a hero and he can do no wrong. And anything that he has done wrong, she just covers over with, a lot of people did things they're not proud of in the war or something like that. Just like this band-aid of like, whatever he did, whatever atrocities, he feels really bad about it. He said sorry a bunch of times, Yeah. Doesn't have poker skills better than the android on TNG. Yeah, I don't think they play poker. They play a lot of what's the game Quark's always playing? Oh my gosh. It'll come to me, or you guys will put it in the chat. Yeah, Dukat is a narcissist. He loves his daughter as an extension of himself. You might be right on that. And maybe his wife and his kids don't super respect him, and who could blame them? And maybe that's why he was like, at least I'll have one person who's related to me and feels like genetically obligated to love me. Nadia says, I am multiracial from multiracial parents and in an interracial relationship. Having people say that interracial couples should not get together because the kids won't know what they are is insulting. I completely agree. And also, like in your case, Nadia, where people have free will to make these choices, that's nobody else's business. That's nobody else's business. Who shouldn't get, yeah, that's none of your business. In the case with Dukat, he's just being a predatory creep, which is his jam. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Nadia, because kids get their identity from so much, and their cultural identity and heritage from both parents is really important. It's important to who they are. And it's not a matter of erasing one or erasing the other or saying they can only have one, but it's about exposing them to all the beautiful richness that makes them who they are. Like that's what makes them even more interesting and unique, and so many traditions they can pull on, right? So it's not like, I'm not seeing the downside. I mean, not anymore. This was very reminiscent of World War II German officers having indiscretions with Jewish Polish women. Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to portray with the Cardassians and the Bajorans, period, but especially with all of Dukat's nonsense with Bajoran women. And this episode perpetrates that. I mean, do I seem like a person who has perpetual identity crisis? Okay, rant over. Multiple identities, just more of you to love. Yes, we love the rant. That's a totally fair rant. And you're like, I know exactly who I am, and I don't feel like I don't belong anywhere. Now, in the case of Zial, because of the cultures, I do think she would have a really hard time on Cardassia, because they're all like, Bajorans are less than us. I think she would also have a hard time on Bajor because they would see her as the enemy, but I don't think it'd be nearly as hard of a time, right? Because Bajor, just the way that people are, they're not so quick to be like, everyone who's not Bajoran is beneath our feet. That's not their perspective. Plus, we had that other episode, I think it was season 1, with the little boy who was a Cardassian who was raised by Bajorans, and then Dukat was somehow in that shenanigans. So they've already shown that Bajoran people are more accepting. Now, Zial herself may feel more comfortable in one place or the other. I think Deep Space Nine was a good place for her to like figure out where she wants to go. But then later on, we see Dukat totally change trains and be like, come to Cardassia, it'll all be fine. So whatever. End of the day, Dukat just wanted what was best for Dukat, I think. Yeah, totally agree. I'd be ruffled if Dukat was my dad. Oof. That is a terrible question. Like, what if Dukat was your dad? I would not claim him. Like, I would not pull a Zial. I would not be like, he's the best ever, and he feels really bad about everything he did. Like, no, you let me suffer in this. No, nope. I would have nothing to do with it. Although, in her defense, he's telling the story from his side, right? So, like, she's maybe not going to get the full story on her dad, or not know who to believe. The planet sacrifices children to keep it going. That was in Strange New Worlds? Oh my gosh, yes. With the little boy, and the little boy was like really smart and he knew all this stuff. And then they were like, we thank you for your sacrifice. And they like plugged him to some machine or whatever. And then everything just sucked out his life essence to keep the planet going. Okay, yeah, that was horrible. Why were we talking about that? Oh, okay, that you hate that more. You hate that episode's message more than this episode's message. Yes, that's fair, because this episode's message is very much about Dukat and Kira. That episode was really more about society as a whole. I totally agree with you. That was a heartbreaking episode. Yes, it makes the relationship with Garrick a little more creepy. I think the fact that she's like 19 makes the relationship more creepy, but that's just me. That's always going to be a hill I die on. David Letterman took a cue from Dukat when you put it that way. What do you mean? When I put it what way? Because I don't even know what I was saying. Tongo. Thank you. That is the name of the game. Tongo. You read my mind. I knew it started with a T. I couldn't place it. Yeah, no kidding. And honestly, the only thing Dukat cared about was keeping Zial with him, to all of your points, because he wanted someone to be like, you're amazing. You're amazing everywhere he went. So he was like, just stay on the ship with me. You don't even need to go to a planet. Just stay on the ship with me. But yeah, she doesn't have to pick between Cardassia or Bajor. There are lots of planets. You're absolutely right. We also have the Gamma Quadrant. There's so much she can do. Oh, PS2 Chipper, you're the best. OMG, if Dukat was my dad, I don't know, man. I'd probably change my name and tell everyone I was an orphan or something. He'd be like, I didn't have a dad. I was genetically engineered in a lab. I didn't even have one. It reminds me of Hitler's sisters bringing lawsuits to get access to his estate. Oh, that's so gross. Yeah. That he bases all his relationships around a position of power. 100%. Like when I heard that, or when he said later that his wife left him and took the kids or whatever, because he had 6 kids, right? I think they were all 6 kids between grown and age 5 or something like that. When he said that, I was just like, who is this woman anyways? You know, like who married him? And then when he said that, I like, oh, she found out about my indiscretion, so she left me. We all know he's been sleeping around for your whole marriage. So this was probably just the excuse you needed so you could leave him in a way that not only saves face for you, but gives him even more public disgrace. So you can leave in like a really big explosive way. But that was probably going to happen eventually. I'd be like, keep it. Don't tell anyone I was related to him. Yes. He likes, anything that gives him power makes him look good. Okay. That brings us to the second episode on my list of an episode that I just didn't super love. Season 4, Episode 10, Our Man Bashir. A transporter accident traps the consciousness of several senior officers in Bashir's holosuite spy program. Bashir and Garrick must play along in the 1960s-style spy scenario to protect the crew's minds until the system can be restored and they can be rematerialized by the transporters. Just as the world is literally falling apart around them, the crew gets saved. Okay, so let's start with what I like. I dislike this episode for the same reason I disliked Facets from season 3. But let's talk about what I liked. I like that it was a spy program. I think that was kind of fun. I like that Bashir was in there with Garrick, who is actually a spy, and Bashir is playing a spy. And I love, like, at the end when things get hairy, how Garrick is like, that's the difference between pretending and being the real thing. Like, all of this is the difference between pretending and being the real thing, right? He's like, in real life, a spy would want to keep a low profile, not drive around in Bugattis and stay in mansions and all this other kind of stuff. And I kind of like that, like the contrast between real and fake spycraft was pretty fun. Costume changes, that's always fun. I usually, and I said this with Facets, I usually like when characters that we know and love get to play somebody different, because I think that's just fun. We get to see the range of the actors. We get to see different personalities. We get to see them say and do things they would never say and do. So normally I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is not that. I know. One of the things I hate, and if you've seen any of my other reviews, one of the things I hate is making the female characters into sex kittens. It just drives me crazy. It's just so lazy. It's the reason why I hated the first Mirror Universe episode so much, because they made Mirror Kira a dominatrix and a nymphomaniac. And it's like, pick a lane. Like that's her, that's what would be really crazy for her. So in this episode, it's no different. Again, the first thing we see with Kira is she's all like, I think the wall turns around and she's laying in the bed, I think, and so she's in bed in a nightgown, like, come take me, Bashir, or whatever. And I'm like, ugh, didn't we already do this? And then we see Jadzia later on, and she's like sexy librarian, she's sexy scientist. And so she's like, Bashir's like, take your hair down and pull those glasses off. Wow, you're so beautiful. And she's like, well, I guess if you agree, I'll have to let you go. Just all of that. It just, like, I like it less every year I age. Like Sex Kitten less and less and less, simply because it's lazy. It's just lazy, because they never do that to the male characters, right? Bashir is already kind of a charming man, and now he's playing an even more charming man, but they never do it to the men where they make the men super charming, just like, like a Stefan or Kel situation. They don't do that to the men. And I'm not even saying sexy. I'm not even saying make the men sex kittens. I'm not saying make them like running around trying to hump everybody's leg. Like, nobody wants to see that. But they don't even change them up so they're super charming. They just make them kind of aggressive, abrasive, annoying. They give them weird accents sometimes that are like not accents that they're good at. And so so it takes you out of the fictive bubble, right? When they're trying these different roles that are maybe too different. I don't know. Anyways, I didn't like this episode. I just didn't like it. And it just kept going and going and going. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I do like the idea that their consciousness was trapped with transporter accident something. And so they had to store them. And the way they stored them in the computer was in the holodeck program because that's the only program that was big enough and complex enough to handle, or whatever techno mumble jumble they used. I actually really like that. Yeah, exactly. I actually really like that. And however, I guess I thought maybe this would go on not quite so long, and then maybe we have like a little bit, maybe the last 10 minutes or so back on DS9 debriefing, or I don't know what, but just talking about something else other than this. But no, this was the whole thing. Up to the very last drop, we have everybody in there just doing their holodeck shenanigans. So I know for some people, they're like, oh my gosh, I love this episode because it's so fun, and more power to you. And like I said, if you love this episode, let me know in the comments the greatness that I missed from this episode, but it was not my favorite. Okay, so I'm going to check the chat, and then we'll go to my third bottom episode before we switch it up and talk about some of the episodes I really loved, which there were some that I really loved. Oh, by the way, I just saw this. Let me scroll back up. PS2 Chipper has gifted 5 memberships to the channel. So if you would like to be a channel member, it is first come, first serve. There's no downside to it, but you do have to snatch it up quickly. Thank you so much, PS2 Chipper. Whoop, whoop. So this is okay. I think there were 3 actresses for Zial. I think there were at least 2, because there was that one for the first episode, right, who seemed really young, and then there was another one like later on when she started dating Garrick. That was a totally different actress, and who was I can't say much older, but who sounded, because I couldn't tell for the makeup, but who sounded quite a bit older. Another holodeck episode. Meh. Yeah, at least 2. I think on the Delta Flyers podcast, they said that the first actress had a hard time dealing with the prosthetics. I can't even blame her, because those prosthetics are no joke, especially like the Cardassians and the Ferengi had to do like the full wrap around your head situation and all around your neck and your shoulders. And yeah, I'm so impressed by the actors who are able to do that. Yeah, some of these episodes are colon. Are colon. I kind of check out. Yeah. Hello, Mr. Captain 93. I will admit, so Robbie says, I will admit, I think Bashir is quite dapper in the 007 suits. I totally agree. He looks amazing. The suits are amazing. Garrick looks amazing. I love all the 007 like visual aesthetics of it, like the drinks and the guns behind the wall and all of that. But like every woman in there was just had her boobs out, and it was just very like, I don't know. Just wasn't my thing. For me, it's Lita. She is lit. It's a parody of the 60s trope. Yeah, but okay, but if we say that this is a parody of the 60s trope, what's the excuse that we give them for the Mirror Universe Kira? Because that wasn't a parody of a 60s trope, and it was the exact same personality that they smacked onto her. So I don't know. I wouldn't say our Man Bashir is the best episode, but it's an awful lot of fun. Avery Brooks gets to Avery Brooks. No Garashir episode can be very bad. Yes, Avery Brooks is very Avery Brooks in this episode. Like he's like, I feel like he wasn't even acting in this episode. He just walked on the set and just was himself while holding little tiny guns. A well-tailored suit works for nearly everybody. It's why Garrick has a job, even though there are replicators. Oh man, what a good character. One of the Zials saw George Costanza after he was in the pool. No way, shrinkage is a thing. That was a funny episode. It was gold in that pool. It's so fun. You guys are silly. Men are super charming naturally. I would like a list of these men, please. Which men from Deep Space Nine are naturally charming? I would like a detailed list. Yeah, totally all the women are sex kittens whenever there's some like altered state. Yeah, no, I get that I totally get they were going for James Bond. Like, I totally get that. And I'm just saying, I don't think the 1960s were the only time period where sexism existed. That's all I'm saying. Oh, this actually don't know. Did this episode come out the same time that GoldenEye came out? I have no idea. I have no idea when GoldenEye came out. But that would be interesting. I like when Avery Brooks gets the chance for overacting. It's always entertaining. Yeah, and he took it. He took that chance. And like, I didn't love him in Mirror Universe. I didn't love Captain Cisco, whatever they called him in that episode. But this felt like the appropriate place for him to be that big bad guy. Call me Mona, and Mona loves it. Don't thank me. I will thank you. I have to thank you. Number 1 on the charming list is me. Okay. Well, that list is very short, Robbie. So I want a long list. We got 1. We got position 1, and I need some more people on the list. Okay, now let's go to the next episode. This is the last episode on the low list, and then I want to switch over to some of the episodes I really enjoyed from this season. So here we go. Season 4, Episode 16, Bar Association. Rom leads a strike of the bar staff against Quark to protest poor working conditions and a lack of pay. The strike draws attention from Liquidator Brunt, who threatens to close Quark down unless he puts an end to this un-Ferengi-like strike. So let's start with things I liked about this episode. I like Liquidator Brunt so much. I love this character. I love him maybe even more than the Nagus, because the Nagus grosses me out sometimes. And just Brunt is like everywhere you turn, it's Brunt. So I love Brunt. Just a great character. And he's always like just coming to mess up Quark's plans. And it's just so delicious because he's like Odo, but more spiteful, right? He's like this thorn in Quark's side, but he's like really just showing up to ruin his life for no reason, because he's bored, no reason to be here. So I kind of like that. I also like seeing a bunch of other Ferengi. I think that's always fun. I liked what I really liked about this episode. Well, I'll talk about what I don't like, and then I'll say what I really liked. What I don't like about this episode is I just thought it was boring. I just thought the episode was kind of slow, and just maybe it needed a strong B plot. I don't remember if it had a B plot, and if it did, I don't remember what said B plot was, but maybe it either needed a B plot or it needed to be the B plot. Because I just feel like it was it wasn't my favorite. It just felt slow and boring to me and drawn out. However, so that's what I didn't like about it. However, I love that Rom stepped into leadership. This was the episode that made me finally like Rom, because I did not like him from like this episode all the way back to episode 1. I did not like Rom. I didn't dislike Rom. I just found him kind of irritating. And I think I said it last week or something, where he's like the Yogi Bear of the space station, and he's just always roaming around trying to steal picnic baskets. I don't know. He just seemed kind of like a buffoon. And I know there were little hints of in episodes where he's really good with engineering, or he's really good with tinkering with machines. And so I liked that they gave him a little more to his character than just being comic relief. But it was this episode that made me like him. I was like, oh, like he's stepping up as a leader, and he's got opinions, and he disagrees with his brother, and he's going to do something. I don't know. He just seemed like more of a person than a punchline in this episode. So I really like that. And I really like that this is the jumping off point to making Rom a more fully fleshed out character. I really like that. He got more of a backbone after this episode. He stood up to Quark when Quark was up to his shenanigans. He got promotions. He got married. He just really grew so much from this. So I appreciate that. I also like at the end where Rom is like, I quit. And Quark's like, what? But I gave you everything you wanted. How could you do this to me? And he's like, well, I realized that the thing that was holding me back in life was you, brother. Like, I love that. I love that whole last scene of him just being like, that this was the problem. The problem is that I was working for you. And that's why I was staying under your thumb and feeling like I was stupid, especially since you called me an idiot continuously. And now I realize that I should actually go for things that I like. I'm going to start working in engineering in Starfleet, in the station, and see how that works. And so I love that for him. So I would say the last 5 minutes of the episode were a joy, and seeing Rom kind of grow up, for lack of a better word, was a joy. But the episode as a whole, I did not love. It just felt slow and drawn out. But like I said, had it had a stronger B plot, or had it been the B plot, I probably would have loved it. It probably would have been like a highlight. I think it was too much for me. Okay, I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to switch over and talk about some episodes that I really loved in this season. You guys are so funny. But he was a union man. A union man. Love this episode. Great episode. This was a hilarious episode. Moogie, exactly. This is like one of my least favorite things that he would do. He would just say it like over and over and over. DS9 episode and GoldenEye each November 1995. GoldenEye out about a week and a half earlier. Okay, so maybe they timed it then because, yeah, that's so interesting. So they were just timing it with the times, which is really smart on their part. The Muse is far worse than any of these, in my opinion. Yeah, the Muse did not make my list of worst things. I think because, hold on, let me see. The Muse is the one where Luoxana is pregnant, right? I'm just gonna open up Paramount on this side. Or am I getting that wrong? Yeah, okay, the Muse is so the reason why it did not make the bottom of my list is because actually I liked Luoxana in the Muse. It's probably my favorite Luoxana. No, it is my favorite Luoxana episode of all of her episodes. Now I know that's not saying much because she's usually on the bottom of my list at all times. But the reason why I liked it is because she wasn't acting like Luoxana in this episode. She had a totally different personality. So I liked her. So that was enough for it to not go in the bottom. Oh my gosh. That was the B plot? I hated that when Jake gets his soul sucked. Oh, that was the B plot of the Muse. Yeah. You're right. So I liked Luoxana in the Muse. It's my favorite Luoxana episode. But yeah, when Jake is getting his soul sucked by this creepy, like predatory woman, everything about that was turning my stomach. Like I was like, why are there? And I think Jake was supposed to be 19 in this, 18, 19. He was supposed to be, I think an adult at this point. Maybe he was 17. I don't know. But whatever. This grown woman stroking his head and whispering in his ear alone in the quarters. My stomach was turning. Like every protective bone in my body was like, somebody save this kid from this creepy woman who's just got designs on him. And I know there was nothing sexual going on. She was stealing his soul instead of his like sexuality. She was stealing his actual life from him. But like this whole scenario was just a problem. And that he's like locked away for hours and hours and hours. He's not eating, he's not sleeping. And she's just like sort of drugging him or whatever she's doing to him, messing with his hormones or I don't know. I don't even know what was going on. But yeah, that was super creepy and upsetting on every level. And I'm really glad that Jake survived. And I really wanted to see Cisco shoot that lady. And I think he did shoot her, but like she like turned into she turned into a ball of light or something and flew away before she could get harmed. And I wanted to see her get harmed for what she did. Like I wanted some kind of justice for Jake. And I also wanted to make sure she never did this to another person or another child, but that was not the cards for this particular episode. She just turned into a ball of light and flew on about her merry way, got what she wanted. I'm blanking on Jake getting his soul sucked. Yeah, it's creepy. It's really creepy. The Muse is such a thinly veiled thing. I hate that stupid fetish thing that has no genuine payoff. Yeah, it's just, bleh. So, but the reason I didn't make the list is because I did like the Luoxana stuff. Okay, now let's talk about episodes I really did like. In no particular order, here's the first episode I really enjoyed from season 4.
Season 4, Episode 3, The Visitor. A timey-wimey accident appears to kill Benjamin Sisko, but in actuality, it traps him in some kind of subspace limbo. Jake spends the rest of his life trying to find a way to break the tether and bring Benjamin back into the land of the living. He ultimately realizes that his only hope lies in self-sacrifice.
So, I love this episode. I actually saw this one like a year ago before I had any context of Deep Space Nine. And I was guessing on a podcast called Trek, Marry, Kill, where you rate each episode and, as a Trek, Marry, or Kill. And usually halfway through the episode, I'm kind of sure where it's going to land on the scale. And then by the end, I'm like, okay, yeah. Because the ending makes a big difference for whether or not I like an episode. So by the time I was like, usually by the time I get to the end, I'm like, okay, it's a Trek, it's a Marry, or it's a Kill. For this episode, the first 5 minutes, I was like, Marry. Like as older Jake is just sitting telling his story and the rain's outside and he's just like, it all started. I don't know, all of that. I was like, Marry. I love this. I'm in. My concern, and this didn't happen, but this is what I thought was going to happen. I thought that that young writer who came to like question him about his writing journey or whatever, I thought she was going to be a bad guy. I thought that was going to be the twist they were going to give to this episode, where she was some kind of bad guy, like maybe a changeling or something but not a changeling because it's not a Dominion episode. But you know what I mean? Like some kind of bad guy. And then at the end, she was going to trick him or try to hurt him or something like that. That's what I thought was going to happen. So every time they had those sweet moments where he's like, let me get you some tea or whatever, I was like, oh, don't trust her. What if she turns into something evil? Thankfully, they didn't do that because I think that would have really undercut the whole episode, which was not about some random girl turning out to be this evil person. The whole episode was really about the love between a father and son and how hard it was for Jake to have lost his father only to find that his father's still alive but trapped, and how that just consumed his whole life. And at the end, since Jake unjaked himself, it wasn't really a moral of the story for Jake, right? There was no way for him to learn a lesson from this experience. So the only one who actually learned from Jake's entire life being wasted was Benjamin. Like he learned from Jake's lesson. And I don't know how he would apply that to his parenting style because he seems to have a pretty solid parenting style already. So I'm not sure how he could do any more or any better. He's like, we were talking about how crap Ducat is as a father. Benjamin Sisko is the opposite. He's like the universe's best father, right? So I'm not sure how he could have done anything differently, even with this knowledge. But this episode was just so good. It was so good. I totally cried at the end too. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I didn't know what was going to happen. And mind you, I watched this episode with absolutely no context about Deep Space Nine. And you don't need any context actually to enjoy this episode. So that's why it was perfect. But I still felt it. I still felt that pain and that loss for Jake. And then we see Jake grieving for like all this time. And then Benjamin shows back up and he's like, Dad, you're alive. And then he disappears. And he's like, no, it's like, oh gosh, rip your heart out. Why don't you? And we get this really tender moment between Kira and Jake where she's like, you need to leave the station. It's not safe for you here. And he's like, I can't leave. What if my dad comes back here? I can't be with it. I mean, this is just good. Like this pulls on all the emotional heartstrings. Wonderful episode, beautiful episode. Amazing. I loved it. Like 10 out of 10. No complaints. I love this episode. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then we'll go to the next episode I really liked on the list. This is funny. I'm sure. So we were talking about that creepy woman who was totally abusing Jake. And Dustin said she's still out there somewhere tormenting, ready to torment someone else in the Trek future. Exactly, which I hate. Like, that's why I wish she was not still out there. But then PS2 Chipper says, don't worry, I'm sure Garrick took care of it and blew up her shuttlecraft later, which actually tracks. I'm going to add that to my headcanon. So I don't think she's going to show back up in Strange New Worlds as some kind of time, someone who exists outside of time, or she'll show up in the academy or something. I don't ever want to see that character ever again. Yeah, I could totally see crying the whole time. It's such a beautiful episode. Best episode of the season. It was a dark and stormy night. Not a very good start. Oh yeah, that was a great episode. Jake is played by Worf's Klingon brother. Yes, the actor who played Kern also plays older Jake. And there's some other actor who plays Kern for whatever reason later on in DS9. I like this episode, but I always think of Picard criticizing that cliche way to start a story. Yeah, this episode was beautiful. I have no complaints about it. Okay, so now let's go to the next episode on the list, which is a two-parter.
Season 4, Episode 11, Homefront. After a suspected changeling attack on Earth, Sisko and Odo are sent to Starfleet Command to advise on security. They demonstrate to the President just how easy it would be for a changeling to wreak havoc on the entire system. Increased paranoia leads to martial law being declared throughout Earth. And now, the conclusion. Season 4, Episode 12, Paradise Lost. Sisko starts to question some of the suspicious things going on in Starfleet Command, which leads him to being imprisoned as a changeling. Turns out that he was on the brink of uncovering a plot by Admiral Layton to take control of Earth under the pretense of defending against the Dominion.
These episodes were so good. I was watching them like, okay, so first of all, it starts out with some kind of explosion at Starfleet headquarters at some kind, I don't remember. You guys will remember better than me, but it starts out with an explosion at some kind of conference. And when they look at the footage, there's like something that shapeshifts right before the explosion happens. So they're like, oh my gosh, that was a changeling. They caused the explosion and for some reason stayed in the room during the explosion also. So then Odo and Sisko are like, let's go. We're going to go save the day. And then they get there and again, there's just so much paranoia and hype. And at one point, Sisko gets arrested because they do a blood screening and the blood in the vial turns into like changeling goo, and they're like, aha, you're a changeling all along. And at one point, one of the, several people are are impersonated by the changeling for various reasons. And at the end, it turns out it was all Admiral Layton's big plan just to rule the world, to rule Starfleet, whatever he would be ruling. And it was like for the greater good, because he thought that the president was not a man of action. He was right about that. And he thought he would be better to be in charge because there is a real clear and present danger from the Dominion. So one thing that I've said before, and I will say it again, this is exactly why the founders should have won this war handily. They should have no need of Jim Hadar. They should have no need of Vorta. The fact that they can do this, that they can show up and just impersonate literally anyone and just change change rules, change policies, change laws, start wars, stop wars. I feel like they should have won this war. I feel like they should have won it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like cheering on the changelings. I'm not like, let's let Earth fall or anything. But just looking at how overpowered these people are just as a people, they should have won this war. They should have won it 1,000 times over. And I feel like, especially in this episode, there was a little bit of cat and mouse going on, because the changeling that impersonated O'Brien at one point and was talking to Cisco, he was just like, do you know how many changelings are on Earth? And I think he said 2. He was like, there's 2 of us. And look at all this havoc we're wreaking just by existing on this planet. We've got everyone freaked out and there's 2 of us. Right. And I don't know. I was just like, they could just be the president and make new rules. They could just be Admiral Layton. They could just be anyone. And also, when Cisco and Odo and Layton are talking to the president of the Federation of the planet, whoever this person is, when they're talking to the president, they're like, you should do blood screenings and you should do phaser sweeps where you just like blanket everybody with phaser fire to make sure that there's no changelings in the room. So I was thinking, at this point, I was like, yeah, I mean, that seems effective because we saw them do that before with the with the war games they were playing on Deep Space Nine. But later on in this episode, when Cisco gets arrested, they do a blood screening and it looks like he has changeling DNA and he's arrested. And then in the next episode, Cisco's like, how did you do it? And Admiral Layton's like, does it even matter? And he's like, not really. But that just goes to show that this whole plan of blood screenings is not foolproof. People can fake the results to make someone seem like a changeling who's not, for their own designs, for their own power plays. And likewise, the changelings see that you're doing this and they can come up with some way to get around it, which they absolutely do. So again, I just feel like the changelings should have won this war, like easily, handily, without even a shot fired by them, because they can just impersonate anyone and cause everyone else to do their bidding. So I don't know. Those are my 2 cents. But anyways, regardless of that thought of why I feel like they should have won, I really, really like these 2 episodes. I liked seeing Joseph Sisko and his restaurant. By the way, I would never go to that restaurant. I would never go. You know why? I bet you the food is really good. I bet you the atmosphere is really nice. But I hate the way, this is just such me as a city slicker. I hate the way that Joseph Sisko talks to every single person, like every single customer, and tells them exactly what they should order. That would drive me bananas. Like, I want to come in, I want to look at the menu. When the server comes over, if I have questions, I want to be like, oh, what's good? Or what do you recommend? Or I'm in the mood for XYZ. Like, that's fine. But if I walk in the door and they're like, hey, how's it going? You should try the crawdads. They're really good. Have you had the corn? The corn's super good. Oh, and like, all that is overwhelming to me. My little introvert heart would just have died in that scenario. And then the way he stops all conversation on occasion just to be like, the jambalaya is coming out, everybody. Like, all of that, I would not like eating at that restaurant, but I liked seeing the restaurant. I like seeing that he runs a restaurant. I liked, and that's just like my personal things, like my own personal issues, but someone without my issues would probably super enjoy that restaurant. I loved all the family bonding. And there was that part where Benjamin actually thought that Joseph might be a changeling, because he was like, no, I will not do blood screenings. I won't do it. You can't make me do it. Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, maybe he is a changeling, because he seemed very against it. But then the very next episode, he's like, blood screenings, sure thing, And then Cisco was like looking at him sideways again. And he was like, well, last time I didn't want to get the blood screenings. You were looking at me sideways. Now I'm getting the blood screenings. You were looking at me sideways. I just can't win with you. And I was like, yeah, true.
And also maybe this is like the point, is that the changelings can cause so much paranoia that you start doubting even yourself, you know, the closest people you know, you start doubting them, which is a question about the changelings, because not only do they change shape, it seems to me, and let me know if this is false, but it seems like they also have memories from the person they've changed into, or mannerisms, or it's not just the looks, but they seem to be able to say things that only the person who is that person would also know. So it seems to me that they don't just change appearance, but they also have more information that they can gather. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but anyways. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then I'll go to the last episode on the list that I super loved. Okay, so Gavin's clarifying that Picard was criticizing the way the novel The Royale began. And I, regardless of how it began, I will agree that the novel The Royale in that episode was trash. So like, that was a terrible episode. It was a terrible novel. It was bad. So criticism, well earned. A Hirogen Hunter 2, 3 of the 4 live action treks to that point. Wait, who's a Hirogen Hunter? What did I miss? I missed something. Oh, did he play a Hirogen Hunter? I didn't know that. I see no parallels to today. I mean, martial law would never be declared under questionable pretext in this day and age, right? Yeah, that's crazy. Have you ever seen 1982, The Thing? I have not. No, I have not. I like these episodes. Best views of life on planet Earth we have seen in Trek. At least until we see Picard. Yes. Maybe Putin is a changeling. I'm telling you, changelings could win so easily. I don't know how they possibly... What's Picard? I don't know how they possibly like lost this war. At any point in any time. The founders don't like to be outside the great length. That is why they have their subjects do their dirty work for them. The founders also have a fear of death, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. They could even be lobsters. That is so true. I agree. The founders created the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar and potentially many, many other species, for all we know, for their self-protection. But once they met a threat as great as what they perceived the entire Alpha Quadrant to be, I think they could have won the war without firing a shot, is all I'm saying. Like, they could have done that and then been home in time for lunch. I'm glad they didn't, because it would have made a less interesting show, but I think they could have. Maybe they should change it from the Dominion War to the Dominion Battle. OMG, me too. Joe Sisko's meddling at his restaurant. Yes. Okay, so it's not just me, Nadia. It's not just me being a weirdo. That whole thing, like, yes, it would have been a crawdad tale. In Florida, a catfish tail. Exactly. Would I prefer a French winery? Well, I don't drink, so no. But it's more just like it's just Joseph Sisko's energy is too big for my little introvert heart. I would have to only go to that restaurant on days when he wasn't working. I'd probably be fine with it. That's their weakness, a lack of memory. Oh, okay. Tony Todd played a Hirogen Hunter in Prey. I missed that. I totally missed that. I didn't know he was in that episode. I didn't know he played a Hirogen. Okay, here's the next episode on the list that I loved from this season. Like, oh my gosh.
Season 4, Episode 19, Hard Time. O'Brien serves a 20-year prison sentence for espionage because he's a little too inquisitive during an away mission. He wakes up to discover that all of those memories were artificially implanted and that only an hour or two has actually passed. Back on Deep Space Nine, he struggles with PTSD and the psychological effects of his fake but also very real imprisonment.
This episode was so good. Like, oh my gosh, this was so intense. I totally cried on this one also. I didn't cry all the way through like I did on The Visitor, but I totally cried on this one too. Seeing what O'Brien has been through, and I don't know. I just love the way they did the whole story because I felt it, you know? I felt like he felt, you know, they just really, even though it's kind of a bottle show, right? It's just him in this prison cell with this guy. And it's just taking these snapshots over time of what happened over the 20-year period and the ways they got along, the ways they didn't.
the ways they try to keep each other alive. And then kind of doing the back and forth time jumps with him being now in DS9, trying to reacclimate to society, seeing these visions of this man everywhere he turns, feeling really guilty because he killed the man because he thought the man was holding out on him and not giving him food, but really he saved food for him. I mean, it just was the whole thing. It was just so heartbreaking. And to see the way that Miles was struggling afterwards, just struggling with Keiko, struggling with Molly, struggling with Bashir, struggling with the station. It's like, yeah, it's been 20 years. Even though in reality it's been 2 hours, his experience is 20 years of experience. And I see, this is why I love Star Trek. Stuff like this, because the whole reason this alien species does this kind of like mind prison is because they find it to be more humane. Like, this is a nicer kind of a prison. Instead of locking someone away for 20 years, we just make them think we locked them away for 20 years. And then they wake up 2 hours later and now they still have, they have 20 years of their life back. So the idea is like, this is such a much more humane way to do it. In reality, this is just as torturous as if they had put him in prison for 20 years. It's just as bad. And in fact, it's almost worse because had he been put in a real prison for espionage, Kira would have come to rescue him 2 hours later. So he would have been in prison for 2 hours instead of 20 years. Right. But this is why I love Star Trek, because this is a question that I think is interesting, is like, what's the difference between punishment and torture or justice and revenge, or those kind of moral, they're not really gray areas, but they could go either way depending on the context. So I really appreciate that they did this kind of a story. This one just hit me in all the feels. I felt so bad for Miles. I felt so bad for Molly and Keiko. I mean, trying to readjust to your husband who's had 20 years of experience locked in a little cell. There was a scene where Keiko wakes up in the middle of the night and she's like, where's Miles? And she looks over and he's laying on the floor because he's been sleeping on the floor for the last 20 years and he's more comfortable down there. And she's just like, ugh, and just, man. And you would think, I think the prison guards were thinking that he would be like, what a relief. I have my whole life back. That never happened. I guess it doesn't matter. It seemed like that's what they thought his reaction was going to be, the way that they were just like, oh, it's only been a few years. It's fine. Like, you can leave now. You can go. We've cleared you. Blah, blah, blah. Like it's fine. It seemed like they thought he would be okay with this, but he's obviously not. He's not relieved to see Keiko. He's not relieved to see Molly again. He's just like, can't even wrap his head around this, because for him, he's been gone for 20 years. And when they go to release him, like, from his sentence, because he served it all, two things. One, they say you were supposed to be kept for 15 cycles and you've been kept for 20. So they kept him over. Like, they didn't even have to say that part. That just felt like insult to injury. We're just letting you know we kept you here even longer than we had to. But anyways, not only that, but also there's no rehab situation for him. I don't know. This episode was just really good and really tough. And I just felt so bad for everybody involved. And Bashir's over there trying to be like, let's be friends. Let's talk about this or whatever. And Miles is just like, leave me alone. I don't even know you. And I don't trust myself around people. And man, this is a good one. This is a really, really good episode. Okay. I'm done ranting and raving about how much I enjoyed it. I'm going to check the chat. And then I do have one honorable mention. Oh, and look at me. We're doing so good on time. And then I'll have time to go through the season and just point out a few other standout episodes that I thought were interesting. Let's see. You need to watch John Carpenter's The Thing. It's usually ranked at the first or second horror movie of all time and ties in perfectly with the dangers of changelings. Yeah, I don't love horror movies. I get scared really easily, but I'll add that to the list of things I'll watch when I'm feeling really brave. This episode is a mind, you know what? I totally agree. For O'Brien, most of all. I agree that this is the best. It's the ultimate in the O'Brien must suffer trope. It's one of those testaments to putting two people in a room that can be enough for captivating television. Yeah, this episode was super good, super compelling. And it was, for the most part, it was the two of them in a room just acting off of one another. And then it was like flash forwards to where he is on Deep Space Nine. But this could have gone horribly wrong, right? This could have been really boring, really slow. Two actors who don't have good chemistry, who have stupid lines, who are not believable in the role, whatever. It could have gone terribly wrong. but it didn't. It went beautifully right. Like seeing these two play off of each other. At no point was I pulled out of the fictive bubble. At no point did I feel like, oh, I'm just watching a show. I was so engaged in the story. I was just like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to Miles? Like, what's going to happen next? What happened to this guy? Because we don't find out that he killed his buddy until the end of the episode when he breaks down and confesses that he feels so guilty. And then his friend just like looked at him and was like, it's okay. And then finding out that this was a construct of his consciousness anyway, so maybe he was killing himself. I mean, there's just layers upon layers. If he didn't need therapy before, he gonna need therapy now after this craziness. O'Brien must suffer, but this time he's taken the phaser into his own hands. Okay, but do you guys think that this is a good form of punishment? Something we should strive for here. It could solve prison overcrowding. Yeah, I think that was, I mean, their argument was not overcrowding, but their argument was, this is so much better than sticking them in a real cell and like having to actually feed them or whatever. Like, you know, all the resources that would be taken up by having a prisoner for 20 years. This person is just strapped into a chair, 2 electrodes placed on his head, 2 hours in and out. They could put like thousands of people through the criminal justice system a day, right? Doing this method. But oh my goodness. Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. And I also think that the reason why they don't have any kind of reintegration program for prisoners, for ex-prisoners, they don't have any kind of rehabilitation, anything for any kind of therapy, any kind of stuff like that, is because that would undermine the trauma they were trying to inflict to teach you a lesson about not committing crimes. Presentation of PTSD has always been a problem in Trek. They go through horrific experiences and next week they are fine and good. That a good thing that DS9 started tackling it. Yeah, they so TNG was the first to have a counselor on the ship. So I feel like that was progressive in the sense that they were acknowledging mental health matters in TNG. That being said, we don't see Counselor Troy doing any counseling until like season 5 or something like that. Like we see her helping Picard with linguistics. We see her doing hypnotism. We see her doing all kinds of random stuff. But we don't actually see her counseling kind of until we see her counseling Barclay, maybe chatting a bit with after Chain of Command when Picard got back from being kidnapped, chatting a little bit with Geordi after he got back from being brainwashed. We don't see a ton of it. And I agree with you that in Deep Space Nine, they actually go into it more. They're not just like, yeah, that it's not just a 5-minute conversation on the couch with Troy being like, yeah, that was really tough, huh? Yeah, it really was. Well, anyways, back to what I was doing, you know, and this episode especially, like we see how painful this is for everyone, not just Miles, but for everyone in his world. And like the hopelessness of wanting to help and not being able to help. I honestly don't know. To some degrees, it sounds like a good idea, but it also seems like it could have Clockwork Orange style consequences. I have seen efficacy data. Would you rather experience 20 years in 20 minutes or be frozen for 20 years without aging? Frozen for 20 years without aging. So you like live for 20 years, but you're like unconscious. You're just asleep for 20 years. What's the point of that? Yeah, neither. I picked neither. Demolition Man for sure. Was it only 20 years in Demolition Man? How many years had passed? All pain leaves scars, whether the scars are visible or not. Yes, I agree. Being frozen is dangerous. Your body can break and only get awoken after 3 million years, and your cat has developed into its own race. That's a hard question. Well, then again, if being frozen 20 years gets me past this political climate, then maybe I'd go for it. Yeah, and if you wake up and climate change has also been fixed and like pollution's not a thing and like things are all better and not worse. They tackled this in Stargate as well. Every example I've seen of this type of justice seems to fail in the long run. I'm not sure if that's a good point, but I'm not sure if that's the point they're making. Like, I'm not sure if the reason why they all fail in the long run is because that's the story they're trying to tell, is that this kind of punishment fails in the long run. Do you know what I mean? Like if that's the agenda, that's the moral of the story. Or if like any punishment at all is going to fail in the long run. But I still think it's an interesting topic, whether they show it as being successful or show it as being horrible like this. I think it gives us a platform to have a discussion about, which is why I've always loved Star Trek, because it gives us platforms to have discussions about things that really matter in the real world. So I appreciate it just for that. The Thing is brilliant, one of John Carpenter's greatest achievements, and you love horror, so I'm not surprised that you love it. Do you like Halloween? You can give it a try then if you're up for it. I like the movie Halloween. I mean, yes and no. It's scary. I think it's also scary. 20 years in 20 minutes can crack the brain. I don't know. My brain may already be cracked. Also, just more of you to love. So funny. Which 3 hours breakdown of the thing. I can't believe how they squeezed certain movies out of it in a B movie. You guys are so funny. Okay, so this is my honorable mention, and then I'll just do like a rapid fire, some episodes that stood out to me about season 4. In season 4, so here's my honorable mention.
Season 4, episode 26, Broken Link. Odo begins losing his ability to maintain humanoid form and decides to return to the Founder's homeworld for help. The changelings hold a trial because Odo was the first changeling to ever harm another. They decide that the only fitting punishment is to turn him into a solid. Also, they sorta let it slip that Gowron is a changeling.
Let me tell you something. This episode is whatever. I don't even remember what happened in this episode. But the end, when Odo's looking at Gowron making his proclamation that the Klingons have now seceded from the Federation and they're like doing their own thing, and they're going to war against Cardassia. When Odo was like, that man, he's a changeling, I was like, Gowron is a changeling! Like I said it out loud to myself. There was no one else in the room. But I was like, what? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. That explains so much. That's why he went to war against Cardassia. That's why he's pulling away from the Federation. That's why he's acting so unhinged. That's why he's starting a war in time of peace. That's why he's like, it just answered everything. And then I was like, but when did he become a changeling? When did the changelings get to him? Did they get to him at the beginning of the season? Did they get to him before that? Have they been planning this for a long? I mean, I had so many questions. And so I went to the chat with some of my TrekTuber friends. So like Dustin and like Win Grace and Robbie and stuff. And I was like, Gowron's a changeling? What is going on right now? And of course, they all knew I was watching Deep Space Nine for the first time. So there was no spoilers. So they didn't say, they just said, keep watching or it gets resolved in the next episode. Something like that. I don't know. But they didn't say like, he's not a changeling or he is a changeling. They were like, just keep watching. They will tell you. That is why this got honorable mention, because I literally was like out loud, what? I can't believe this. And I had so many questions. If I had watched this show in real time, I mean, I didn't watch Star Trek at this point. I wouldn't have been watching Trek with anyone else. So I wouldn't have had anyone to bounce my ideas off of. But if I was watching Trek watching DS9 in real time, this episode would have absolutely kept me glued all summer waiting for the season premiere. Absolutely. Like, absolutely. I would have been like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Like, is Gowron a changeling? Are they going to expose him? Like, how are they going to expose him? This was such a good cliffhanger statement to make, to just be like, you know, oh yes, that man is a changeling. Boom. And the episode goes off. Whew. Great cliffhanger. So that's why it had to get an honorable mention. I'm going to check the chat one more time. And then I just want to go over a couple of episodes that really stood out to me, good or bad. Yeah, you know what? As far as having somebody dress up like Michael Myers, I had a friend do this at a Halloween party once, and it was so creepy. It was so creepy. He dressed up like Michael Myers, blood and everything, the big knife covered in blood, all of that, and he was just like walking. And I lived in New York at the time, so we were heading to a Halloween party. It was a couple of us, and he kept like stalking people as we were walking to the party, like walking really aggressive and like looming over people and stuff. I mean, talk about method acting. It was terrifying though. I think the whole thing with Odo is messed up because the changelings try to hurt him first. I agree. And I think the changeling that he killed was trying to, if my memory serves me right, he was trying to kind of push Odo to the side, but he was actively trying to murder all the solids. Like he was actively trying to do that. He was trying to get the warp core to blow up and all the stuff. But Odo, he just kept kind of like pushing out of the way. But like if he would have blown up the warp core, he would have blown up everybody, including Odo. So, you know, I feel like Odo was acting in self-defense. I don't feel like, but also wasn't it the other guy's fault for starting it? I agree with you. And then also like, how are they both going to escape that situation? I don't think so. I think they were both going to die. And the only reason they know Odo harmed another, the only way they could know that is if Odo told them, right? By linking or whatever. But it seems like they knew that already, which is why they, not convinced, what's the word? Manipulated, which is why they manipulated him into coming back to the Great Link. They somehow poisoned him or something, so he had to come back. So, I don't know. I think we can agree the changelings are just manipulative. They're just manipulative. This is a good episode, but I think it's actually the weakest season finale in DS9, only because the other 6 hit even harder. Yeah, there were some great season finales. I'm just saying this had to make honorable mention because of not even the whole episode, not even everything that happened to Odo. The only reason is the last scene when he says Gowron's a changeling. Like, that just broke my brain, so it had to make the list. Can you imagine that you're sitting around with neighbors outside and you look over and there's some Michael Myers dude just walking down the middle of the street? I noped out of there, right? Okay, I want to talk about so that's my whole list. Now I just want to talk about some episodes that stood out to me from season 4. Definitely let me know if I did not mention an episode that was your favorite in season 4. Let me know in the comments. And please subscribe if you haven't yet already, because next week we're going to be talking about season 5. But let's see. Okay. Oh man, there's so many good ones in season 4. So Way of the Warrior obviously was amazing. It was great to see Worf. I knew Worf was on this show, so it wasn't as big of a shock for me. I was just like, I knew he came on eventually. I knew he came on in season 4. I didn't know when. And so it just all made sense. But had I been watching the show in real time and somehow not known Worf was going to join the cast, which I don't see how, because they probably were saying it, shouting it from the rooftops, but I would have flipped my lid if I was watching this in real time. I would have been like, oh my gosh, it's Worf. And I have to say, the same way that the Ferengi got a total glow up in DS9 and the Klingons just got way more fleshed out storylines, Worf got a major glow up in DS9. He got speaking roles. He got like all kinds of, he wasn't beat up every 2 seconds. He like won every single fight in all of DS9, and he lost every single fight in all of TNG except for that one in Parallels when he won Best Warrior Standing, and we didn't even see that fight. That fight happened off screen before the episode started. So in DS9, he wins every fight. He's got I don't know, he just has a glow up. He feels like a full, complete character, not just the guy who stands in the back and then shoots things. So yay for that. Anyways, let's see what else. I like the Hippocratic Oath, the one where Bashir wanted to help the Jem'Hadar cure their addiction to Ketracel White, and he like really wanted to help them, and O'Brien was like, bump this is war, we need to just sabotage their stuff and get out of here. I like that episode. I like that on all the layers. I liked seeing Bashir really trying and thinking he can help, and these people could be won over to our side because they don't want to be held captive by the founders. And then O'Brien just being like, I'm going to do what's best for you, and then blowing up the whole machine and being like, there, now you can't stay. It was a good episode. Let's see what else. I actually liked Little Green Men. The Ferengi episodes, I'm a little neutral about them. I think neutral to negative about the Ferengi episodes in general, but I like Little Green Men. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. Like, I like the time travel aspect. I like that Odo came along with them. I like that we got to hear Ferengi speech without the universal translator, even though it was just like listening to a record being run on reverse. That was neat. Did not like our Man Bashir. Hold on. Odo is ordered to protect the First Minister. Nah. Dukat asked for assistance from Kira. Nope. Sons of Moog. Is that the one where we get to see Alexander again, or is that next season? Oh, no, that's the one where Kern comes and then has to have his memory wiped because he cannot live with this discommendation part 2, which I totally agree with. And I feel like Worf did not think about his actions and how that would affect anybody but himself. And I'm glad that they had a whole episode about how Kern cannot deal with this situation, because I was thinking the same thing. And I think I said this last week, but I also don't understand why Kern is not like married with a bunch of kids, because I feel like his character would be. But I was like, why didn't Worf even like think for 2 seconds about how this would affect everyone else in the House of Moog? He was just like, whatever. Like, he would have made the same decision, I think, because he made the decision that he thought was most honorable. But the fact that he didn't even think about anybody else's lives, I think, was really terrible. Accession, I like that one with the 200-year-old Bajoran poet who's like, I am the emissary. And then all of a sudden, this is when Benjamin Sisko really stepped up, because this is when he was like, because the whole time he's been like, I'm not the emissary, don't call me that. But it was this episode where he was like, okay, fine, I guess you could be the emissary. And then he was like, great, we're going to go back to the way things were 200 years ago, because they were just better. They were just better than whatever you're doing now. And I know you've been through a war, but I don't really get that. So we're just going to go back to my way. And then all of a sudden, Benjamin is like, wait a minute, I think I want to be the emissary, because I don't think you're doing a really good job. I really like that episode. Nope.
Cisco discovers that Cassidy is smuggling medical supplies. Oh, I like that one. When we find, isn't this the one where we find out that what's his face is the head of the Maquis? That was good. That was a good reveal. I did not see that coming. I remember what's his face. Remind me of this guy's name. Lieutenant something. I remember in the episode when they were going to go get Garrick, how he was the one who had sabotaged the Defiant. And he was like, I'm just following the Admiral's orders. And in that episode, I was like, oh man, I do not like this guy. I do not trust this guy. Eddington, thank you. Yeah, I was like, I don't like him. I don't trust him. Send him out of airlock. He just doesn't seem, he seems shady. I had no idea they were going to turn this character to the leader of the Maquis. That was great. That was such a great twist, because when they did, I was just like, of course it's him. Of course it's freaking Eddington, this by the book person who doesn't do anything wrong and doesn't believe in the Maquis' cause and blah, blah, blah. Turns out to be the ringleader. I like that. That was a nice touch. So much better than creating a whole nother character that we have no emotional connections to be the ringleader. Let's see. Renegade Jim Hadar discovers an ancient Iconian gateway. The quickening was interesting about that disease and how Bashir was like, I can't cure you guys, but I can cure your children. That was, that, like, the fact that the woman who was giving birth, who died, like, that was really sad. And the fact that he did find a cure, but the cure can only go for the babies, was also really heartbreaking, because you just got to hope that the moms make it long enough for the babies to get that cure. And everybody was genuinely happy, because they were like, you did anything for us. Like, that means our future generations will be a point where the quickening no longer exists. And they were happy. And it was just like, man, the founders don't play. They don't play, because they could have done anything to this planet, but they decided to do something that's so painful. And I think they had this quickening for like hundreds of years, right? Like 200 years or something like that, where their society can only get so old before the quickening takes them. Let's see. When Quark thinks he's going to die. And then Kira takes the baby. Yeah, I think that's it for the things that really stand out to me. So this is a really good season. And season 5, and then I'm going to check the chat. So okay, I'm watching Deep Space Nine for the very first time ever. And I've been doing a season by season kind of review each week. And I've been talking about my top 3 episodes and my bottom 3 episodes and a few honorable mentions here and there. But honestly, after finishing season 5, there were no episodes I didn't like. There were none. I don't think that's ever happened before. There were episodes I liked better than others, but there was none that I was just like, ugh, this episode's dumb, or like, oh, this episode's boring, or like, oh, I hate seeing Kira and Dukat again. You know what I mean? There was no episodes that I just felt like the whole episode was trash, or was something that I just didn't love. I legitimately liked every episode, and then loved many episodes, and then super loved a handful of episodes. So there isn't even a bottom 3. Like, I had to scrounge to try to justify what could be a bottom 3. So I'm changed it up. For seasons 5, 6, and 7, I'm just going to do my top 10 episodes. We're just going to do all 10, because there aren't even any low episodes for me to talk about, but there are so many good episodes for me to talk about. So just letting you know, for next week, when I talk about season 5, I'm just going to be talking about my top 10 episodes for season 5. Yeah, I know, worthless gold. Exactly. That was like, what the heck? Okay. The Quickening was excellent. Maybe Trek's best medical drama, or at least until Under the Cloak of War in Strange New Worlds. The Quickening was and the Quickening was only like, it was just like a 42-minute episode, like all the other episodes, but it felt longer. Did it feel like that to you? For me, it felt like a movie. I think they just told so much of a complete story, maybe because there was no A and B plot. It was just one story, but it was really fleshed out. I felt like I knew these people and what they were going through, and it felt like a full story. Not fighting blue barrels in the cargo bay. I love Little Green Man. Yeah. Worthless gold. Little Green Men is so much fun. That one was really good. What happened to Kern was sad. He was such collateral damage to Worf's decisions, and Worf just couldn't care less. Accession is a nice kick in the pants for Cisco about being the emissary. He totally was like, fine, I'll be the emissary after somebody else wants the job. I think that's the only thing I disliked continuity-wise, is that gold-plated latinum is valuable. I think in Little Green Men, Quark wanted the gold. Then in later episodes, he called the gold worthless. Yeah, I don't really remember, but I did like that episode. I liked when they were trying to fix their universal translators in their heads,
And so they kept hitting their heads to try to make it work, and how Rom is trying to like fix it inside of Nog's ears, and how the humans, soldiers and scientists, they're like banging their heads or like, you know, imitating whatever Quark's doing to try to communicate. I don't know why, but I just found that really funny. I hated Eddington. Oh gosh. His whole Jean Valjean Les Miserables obsession was so annoying. Yeah, it reminded me of in First Contact when Lily Sloan is talking to Picard and she's like, "Okay, Captain Ahab," and then and then Picard starts quoting Ahab, and then Lily's like, "I never read that." I thought that was funny, but it reminds me of that. I feel like they were trying to do something like that, where Eddington just keeps showing up, being like, "So, Jean Valjean, what are you going to do now?" You know, or whatever. He was a lot. His personality was really big. Of course, they gave him an honorable death, some kind of self-sacrificey death. But yeah, he was annoying. But what a great character, because they clearly wrote him well, because he irritated both you and me. So he did it properly, right? They wrote him in such a way where you're just like, "Oh, this guy," and that's how we were supposed to feel. For all those battles with DS9, only To the Death shows massive damage where they lost an entire upper pylon. To the Death. Which one was that, Dustin? Nadia, Eddington loves you. Thank you, Big Stretchies. $5 just to say season 5 is awesome. You're so welcome for the content. Yeah, season 5, so good. Like, I had no low episodes. I got to the end and I was like, I don't even know what to say. There's no low episodes this entire season. Like, it's just really good. And then that just continued. It's just like, yeah, so good. And I do feel like I did watch a little bit of the documentary, because when Grace had suggested watching that documentary after I finished DS9, and all the actors were like, "We were the middle child. Nobody loved us. You know, nobody wanted to watch our show." But I'm like, there were 7 seasons though. And they were like, "And we feel like our show was better and we didn't get a chance." And I'm like, this show is amazing. I would agree then. I mean, the show's amazing and it just keeps getting better. And maybe being ignored a bit gave them more freedom to do more interesting things, whether it worked or not. And I feel like season 5 and on, it super worked. The death is where Wei Yun is introduced. Oh, yeah. Yes, and the station took all that damage before the episode started. Yes. I wonder, and Dustin or Win Grace, you probably know the answer to this. So Wei Yun was in that episode, right? And then like he died at the end of the episode. And then a couple episodes later, or maybe next season, Wei Yun comes back. And then they're like, "Oh, yeah, the Voyager are all clones. And so we just have a bunch of copies of the same ones." Do you think they did that because they wanted Jeffrey Combs back in that role because he was so perfect? Do you think they were just like, "We need to get him back. We're just going to get Wei Yun back and we're just going to say that they're clones and we could just like have unlimited numbers of them"? Because that was such a genius move to be like, "Oh yeah, there was always many of them." And then they kept playing on it, right? To be like, "We'll just get another one," or we're going to thaw out another clone. Like, that was so interesting. So let me know if if they did that on purpose, or if they just always had this plan. Because it didn't feel like they always had that plan to me. It felt like they were like, we want this guy back. He's so good. And they were just like, "Okay, magic, you're back." And I think that was genius. I am waiting for season 5 to bring up the baby daddy. The baby daddy. Oh my gosh. Are you talking about Ducat and his nonsense? More work for O'Brien fixing an upper pylon. I know, right? Oh, what is the name of this documentary? I think it's called What We Left Behind. Oh, yep. Dustin has it. It's called What We Left Behind. It's not on, I don't know what it's on Canada, but here it's not on Paramount Plus. It was on Amazon Prime. So I don't know. Nadia, check Paramount first, Paramount Canada or whatever, to see if it's on there. And then if not, maybe check Prime. It's like 2 hours long. So it was a little too much for me, but I kind of skipped around, heard a little bit of what the actors had to say. And the interesting thing, which I think is why when Grace suggested watching it, is they have this hypothetical episode 8 or season 8, episode 1. So like if there was a season 8, how would it start? And so they break out this episode and they do like sketches. There's drawings to go with the different scenes. And it's like the writers all get together to write this new episode. And the episode has a time jump. So like it's 20 years later or whatever, however much time has actually passed from the show ending to when this documentary was made. And so they're like, okay, where's Kira now? And where's Jake Sisko now? And they kind of talk about what the story could be. I didn't get the full thing because, I had to watch the whole documentary just to get like those little clips together. There's probably something on YouTube though that has pasted it together. I'll have to look for that. But anyways, it's interesting. And if you like stuff like this, just sitting and talking about the show, it's good. It was a little bit heartbreaking though, because it was a lot of the actors just being like, nobody liked us. Nobody wanted to watch us. I didn't like when Worf came on the show because I felt threatened, so it does take away a little bit of the shine and the glamour of the show to see the real people working the real jobs. And the actor who played Dukat was like, I just wanted you guys to say that I was good. No one ever said I was a good actor. And they were like, dude, we wrote you in every episode in all of season 7. That's because we loved you. And he was like, why didn't you tell me that then? I needed to hear somebody say it. So it's very humanizing, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. Okay, so they just wanted Jeffrey Combs back. They like Jeffrey Combs so much, they added the clone part for the Voyager just for him. I totally believe that. He's so great in that role. Like Brunt and Wei Yoon, is there a DS9 without them? Like, they just add so much flavor, and the characters are so distinct, and you can't even tell it's the same person. He is good. The man is good. Okay, I'm done ranting. Thank you so much for coming. To everyone who came live and everyone who is still watching on the replay. Join me next week when I will be talking about my top 10 favorite episodes from season 5 of Deep Space Nine. See you next week. Bye.